A lot of talk this week about Georgia. Are they on upset alert? Kentucky's going to be physical. They're going to be downhill. Look what Kentucky did to Florida the week before, and all that happened was Georgia rolled at the crib. Final score, Georgia 51, Kentucky 13. The big dogs, man, it's safe to say they ate greedy. What does this mean for Georgia now going forward? What can we take away from this game as far as Georgia as an identity and them coming together in the 2023 season? Because remember, we talk about this a lot on this show. Last year's team is not this year's team if you're a Georgia football fan. This year's team is on their own path, charting their own course, but even so, last night looked very 2022-ish in a lot of sense. Before we get to that, though, make sure you're subscribed right here. Georgia fans, had a lot of y'all join the party recently and be subscribed to the show. We're glad to have y'all here. If you have not yet subscribed, or maybe if you just want to double check that you are subscribed, go ahead and hit that for us, and we appreciate you in advance for being a part of this operation. Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at JDPikel. Georgia started fast, man. Like the dogs got out the gate hot, 34-7 at half, and at that point it was like pretty much over. Like at that point you kind of knew, okay, that 34-7 against Georgia, you're not really coming back from that kind of deal. Like when Georgia gets leverage on a team, they're not one to really let you back into it. And I think the critique all season to this point was, well, yeah, Georgia's undefeated, but look how they've started games. They've been down to Auburn. They've been down to South Carolina. They started slow against UAB. Like, that was kind of the thing people had said about Georgia all year long. That was the critique was, Georgia, yeah, they're talented, but they're not going to go 3 in a row. Well, if they go 3 in a row or not, that's not going to happen in October. But what you saw yesterday, the way that they started fast, I think should make the rest of the college football landscape very nervous. And I attribute Georgia starting fast yesterday to two different things. The first is it feels like Georgia is kind of like an apex predator. And apex predators, they don't like to be just fed their food. They don't want it served on a plate or in a bowl. Like, they want to go and hunt. And for Georgia, they hadn't really had an opponent where they really had to go into hunt mode or really go into just predator mode until Kentucky. Now, Auburn put them in predator mode. South Carolina put them into predator mode. But Georgia last night, right from the gate, it was, okay, undefeated Kentucky team, ranked Kentucky team. Kentucky put some things on tape that's going to challenge you with how they get downhill. You got to be in hunting mode right from the get-go. And so all that's to say, I think Kentucky had Georgia's attention from the first snap. From the time toe met leather, that was when Georgia was like, okay, it's time to go. I can't prove it, but that was the way it felt to me. Second thing, for Georgia, it felt like Georgia kind of found their footing last night in a way we hadn't seen them find their footing before in this season. And that's not to say that Georgia hadn't still looked good offensively at times. Second half of Auburn, I think you could say that Georgia really was rolling. Second half of South Carolina, felt like Georgia was getting going there too. But last night, it felt like they were really comfortable in a way we hadn't seen them be comfortable yet this season. And I think there's no more of a there's not a more visible example of that than Carson Beck. Like, this offense as a whole just continued to take small steps forward each week, and last night it kind of came together in a very big way. And like I said, Carson Beck and his stat line and the way that he looked last night overall, just the eye test, I think it speaks to that. He looked like the Carson Beck that we thought we were getting from that G-Day performance. Like, just dialed in, surgical, knew where to go with the football, never looked out of sorts, never looked out of control, just very calm, collected. 28 for 35 last night, 80% completion percentage, 389 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Here's the thing, though, with the 1 interception. He's trying to make a play downfield. That was the other critique all season long to this point. Hey, Carson Beck, man, if we want to get to where we want to go, we got to push the ball downfield. We can't be a nickel and dime kind of offense. We got to let all our weapons stretch the field vertically. Brock Bowers, he can run really fast. He's really big. We got to get him the ball down the seam. We got to get all these weapons the ball vertically. And so last night you saw him trying to make plays downfield, and he made a ton of plays downfield. We saw multiple shots connect downfield for Georgia. Now, the interception is just kind of a byproduct of being aggressive, and so I think you live with that. But what it does when you take shots downfield, it, one, makes a defense have to honor that, so the box stays lighter, and 2, it unlocks all the potential of what you have from a weapon standpoint offensively. Like, if you have a speedy outside wide receiver, you have a speedy guy as a better example of Dominic Lovett in the slot, or a high point mastermind like Ra Thomas, you don't get to take advantage of that if you're just throwing the ball underneath every single time. You don't get to challenge those safeties if you're just, like I said, going check down to check down. The way they pushed the ball downfield last night sent a message to the rest of the country now, okay, hey, Georgia, they have that element to the offense. You better be able to play the entirety of the field against this Georgia offense. They're going to do that to you. And Mike Bobo, too, to his credit, man, second week in a row now, we've seen him dial up winners for Brock Bowers. And Brock Bowers going into the week, if you were on the Kentucky defensive staff, he was public enemy number one. Like, he was what you thought about when you went to bed, first thought when you woke up in the morning. Brock Bowers, stopping Brock Bowers. How do we stop 19? And didn't matter. 7 catches, 132 yards, 1 touchdown. And a lot of those catches, y'all, to be honest with you, Brock Bowers is running wide open. Brock Bowers has got a lot of real estate around him when he catches the football. So what does that tell us? Hey, Kentucky, do they have some busts defensively? Maybe so. But I also think offensively for Georgia, Mike Bobo was scheming him open and finding ways to get 19 the football. That's what good offensive coordinators do. We said it last week. You get your best players the football, and you don't let the defense dictate to you who they can take away. And Georgia did that yesterday really effectively. Mike Bobo did that really effectively. So here's what would make me nervous if I'm the rest of college football. Yes, Georgia stretching the ball downfield more. Yes, Carson Beck coming into his own. Obviously, that's a good sign for Georgia, and I think shows that Georgia's going to be a factor yet again in November. Surprise, surprise. Georgia, to me, yesterday, started to really establish that physical identity that we've come to know Georgia by, because that was the question, right, going into the week. Hey, Kentucky, they're going to pull their linemen. They're going to get downhill. Ray Davis, he went for almost 300 yards against Florida. Like, Georgia has their work cut out for them. Georgia didn't play really well against the run against Auburn. Georgia wasn't fitting things super effectively the previous week. Now, in this game, though, Georgia, I'm sure they heard all that. I'm sure the coaching staff heard all that, and they got themselves ready to play. And it wasn't a thing of where they were living on 2022's accomplishments. It was 2023 Georgia last night, getting it done and finding a way to answer the call to action and meeting the mission of what Kentucky was bringing to the table. Held them to 55 yards rushing, allowed 2.3 yards a carry against this Kentucky football team. They had a long of 11. Longest carry on the day for Kentucky, 11 yards rushing. Longest rush. That says something, all right? And so for Georgia now, the physical element of this Georgia football team starting to take shape, line of scrimmage starting to come into its own, the vertical element being there with Brock Bowers, with Carson Beck, with the rest of these weapons like Georgia now, I promise you, nobody is going to want to play them in November. And I think when Georgia's firing on all cylinders with the personnel they have, and when they play the way they did last night, I don't think anyone's hanging with Georgia. We talked about the defensive line of scrimmage for Georgia, the way they ran the football last night, 5.6 yards a carry. And that's supposed to be the quote-unquote weakness of what Georgia has offensively. I'm telling you, man, they're starting to round in the final form. We said it a lot. Just because they look a certain way in September doesn't mean they're going to look that way in November. And we're right now in October, and Georgia, again, is starting to kind of roll into what we think they're going to be. Good teams trend to play their best football November, December, January. We're just projecting now a little bit, but that's the way this Georgia team is looking based on what we saw last night in Athens. An absolute clinic, passing out juice boxes and T-shirts after the game because of what they put on from a clinic standpoint. Make sure you subscribe right here. College football, only college football every single day. Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Jody Pickell. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.